So we'll talk about release planning today and the role of a Scrum Master in release planning. Why is this very important? It's very important on so many dimensions. Yesterday, when we're having the class on leading safe, there was a very interesting conversation that came up. And that conversation was how Scrum Masters actually struggle and to collaborate with their managers, to collaborate with your PO. And sometimes you feel like, oh, I'm having a problem with my PO. My PO only wants me to do this. My PO wants me to listen to them. My manager wants me to do this. And you have your manager or your PO on your space. And I think this conversation also started when you can have a tech lead and a PO who are like two main people in the team, and both of them are giving you different information. The tech lead wants you to take order from them, the PO wants you to take order from them, and there's that contradiction, right? And like, okay, what will I do in this case? Now, the reason why you're wondering what you should do in that case is because you've not yet understood the power you have as a Scrum Master. Now, not only because you're not understanding it, because you have not built the capacity to stand out as a leader in that space to be able to command the respect that you need. Now, you realize that because you go to your product owner or to your tech lead or to your manager to ask any little question and to get any little approval, they treat you as someone who is not an expert. So when situation come, you don't expect them to trust you to handle that. So in that case, now they're looking at you as a subordinate under them. What happened? You're like, oh, this is important. It's because you created that environment. But then when you understand exactly what your role is as a Scrum Master, you have that capability to step in and mediate and be a key contribution to the conversation that is going on. So release planning is not just an activity. You go to your backlog and you check and like, okay, you know what? I'm prepared for my release planning. It's a whole entire flow. If you work in a safe environment, the reason why the plan according to PIs, right, is because we need priorities. The reason why things are sectioned from epics, deliverable epics, futures, and stories is because there is a plan on exactly how we need to get this out. And when we have this plan right, what happened? We don't have surprises. So that's the importance of release planning. Now, if you look at release planning, more like the technical aspect or the hands-on you do at the level of the backlog, you realize that the most often you find it difficult to answer the question. Right. So the understanding of the concept as a whole, the understanding of the concept of release planning as a whole, it's very important. Just imagine, let's look at this scenario. You're in an interview and they ask you, what is your role as a Scrum Master in release planning? And then you start by saying, oh, we do releases every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. And what I do is just to check to make sure that all the stories that need to go in the release are there, they're completed on time. On the day of the release, I stay up with my Scrum team and make sure all my checklist is ready and make sure that they deploy effectively. Now, that's a very correct answer, right? It's very correct. It's not wrong. It's what you do during the process. Versus someone who answer the question this way. Like, okay, this is a very important question. And the reason many projects actually fail is because they don't prepare well for this. And they think that release is just something that should happen at the level of the team. Now, when we're looking at release planning, we are looking at the whole entire flow from when the project was conceived, how the business collect requirements from the stakeholders, because this is what helps us to know exactly what is needed at what point. And if this process is left only at the team level and it's not considered appropriately at the business level, what happens? We have surprises where customers asking for something and business did not even know that the team need to get that out. What's going to happen? Now we push in requirements in the middle of the spring because we need to get this out. It's taking us by surprise. What is happening? We're pushing pressure on the team and there's a whole lot of misalignment. So for us to effectively ensure that a Scrum Master can support release planning effectively, they need to be, first of all, alignment from up. And when they start alignment, now or the Scrum Master can be able to make reference to the roadmap that give us an idea of the release planning, which is exactly what the what the customer wants. And in release planning, we are looking at what? It's about we are releasing minimum marketable features, or we are looking at what? What is the minimum functionality that can go out and the customer can start using it? That's the key concept of release planning. If I release something to you, let's say I'm building a car for you, and I release the tire to you. What use is the tire when you cannot drive a car? Just to keep it and see it. Now you also realize that releases doesn't come the same on every project. So in most of the cases, you cannot say, oh, I release every 1 month, I release every 2 months, when the project you're working on doesn't warrant you to release every 1 month or 2 weeks, right? So there is no fixed calendar to say, oh, release must happen every 2 weeks, release must happen every 1 month, release must happen every 3 months. Your release planning is dependent on exactly what you're working on. We can even have releases every day. Let's say your team, it's a support team, which means that the product is already in the market. And what we need to do is to fix or optimize certain functionality that need to go out to the customers. We can optimize every day and send it to them so that we start improving the workability of the product, right? So now we understand that the concept of release planning is not about how frequent should the Scrum Master release, how frequent, it's about the product. Now, when you understand it from this level, what happened? Your entire conversation changed. The way you can answer it actually changed. It's just like someone asks you, oh, where's your house located? Right? Even if you don't know the address, you will not struggle to explain to them. Right? You can already picture, you have a picture in your mind, and it can help you tell a very clear story that can help that person figure out what you're talking about. And the second thing is that you will not kind of be in a panic or lack confidence to say what you say. It's your house. You might not know the address. You might not even know the neighborhood very well, but you can talk about it confidently. Why? Because you understand exactly what you're about to say. Now, this also brings me to a point where for you to be able to even understand this, you must have done your own assignment. You must take time and read that when we introduce a concept in a mastermind like this, it's not all that is therein. And I know probably you might listen to this video over and over again, which is good. But if you don't also take time to go and try to read another document to understand exactly what is the process, you realize that all what you know is all what I said in this meeting. And then when you read something somewhere else and it's a bit different, it confuses you completely. That's why you hear people say, oh, I heard someone said this, I don't even know what is the right answer. The reason you don't know what is the right answer is because you're not investing personal time to also learn it for yourself. So all what you've learned is all what you've heard. And this is the reason why I always say, no matter how much you listen, the most powerful concept that's going to help you is what you've read. What you've read is very important. Books are by far still the most powerful way to learn a concept. What is release planning in its great sense? Let's kind of put a picture on the whole concept of release planning and what you're expected to know, and then we can have a conversation about that right here. So we just said that, or I just explained that release planning should start from what? Should start from business. So, and business talking to who? The customer, right? And collecting what? Requirements. So now requirements, this is also very interesting. Requirements is not collected primarily by the product owner. So you need to pay attention to this. Requirements is not collected primarily by the product owner. So it is, first of all, collected by those who have the business. Now, see what happened within Scrum before it ever get to the team level, because most often we kind of have the understanding that, oh, the PO is the one that talks to the customer, and if they collect the requirement wrongly, the project is going to go wrong, right? That is right. But it's only right if you can situate it in this context. Now, the PO is not the one who make the business negotiation. Now, there is something that happens right here. You need to understand that no product comes in without money, right? If not, what are they using to pay you? So there's a level up here which we call what? You call them business, or you can call them epics, or you can call them leadership, right? Those who have the leadership. Those who have the leadership are the decision maker, are those who negotiate the contract, and they're able to find a strategy and a budget. So they put a strategy and a budget to the project, right? So the project is operating under a strategy and a budget, and this is also called portfolio, right? It's operating under portfolio. So we know exactly how much money we have to implement this. And this is also the reason why within the same company, you can have two different managers hiring. One of them are paying their Scrum Master 65, and the other is paying 67 or 77. The same company. Why? It depends the project you're attached to and what they have on the strategy and their budget. So you realize that all of these requirements gatherings start happening up here, and the negotiation of what the customer need and the agreement they had with leadership in that company. Now, when this happens, they have what? They have what we call the high-level requirements, and the high-level requirements are what? The high-level requirements is what we call epic. Now, these are ideas, and ideas communicate what the customer wants. Right. So what does the customer want? I want you to build me a platform where I can be able to centralize, or I can be able to visualize all my customer data on one spot, and I can be able to see exactly what every staff is doing within the company. And then businesses, okay, great idea, we can do that. And then they collect a requirement from here. So, okay, what are we building here? We are building an idea, which is what? Centralized system for staff support. Okay, and the business said, okay, we can do this, and this is going to cost you $3 million to get this done. All right, $3 million. What exactly will I be expecting from what you're going to deliver? So, okay, we're going to build you a couple of ideas. We want it to be one hop login, right? So the customer is giving it. We want it to be transparent to management. All right. We want it to be able to track productivity. We want it to be able to allow for updates. All right, let's kind of say this is what they want. Now you realize that what they want at this level, it's what? It's still very high level. But now a dollar amount is put to every of this idea. Why? Because we are estimating at a higher level with many experts. And the reason why they said it's going to cost you, because they evaluated that based on historical data and based on what we've been doing. We normally build this one hub block in, it costs us almost about 1M. This is going to cost us almost about 3,000K. It's going to cost us almost about 1M, about 700. So because of that, the negotiation is done at this level. Now, when the project comes, business now have received and they sign a budget, what happened? We said, okay, we need to see how to get this work done, right? We need to see how to get this work done. And then they pass it to what? They pass it to their, I would say, the management team. Now, if this is a very big project, they're going to pass it to strategies before management. If this is something that is not so big, right? So this is where you have a layer called last solution and safe. But in most cases, this would not really be the case because most often portfolio even try to avoid the last solution in some of the cases because now it adds another layer of leadership that makes the project a bit complex. So in some of the cases, what they do is that they can break this into different organization or into different portfolio that do not really need so much intervention of last solution. But then some big companies still keep the last solution, which means that they're going to pass the project to strategies, right? Strategies in this case are those who you're going to be the call like CIOs and directors and all of these. These are the CIOs, right? These are more like the people who want to strategize. Now, if this level happen, in most cases, this level is not there. In most cases, we move directly from this is the project idea to this is the product manager, right? Now, the idea of the product manager is that we can take this idea and we say, okay, the one hub lock-in is the product. The transparent management, it's another product, right? We'll have another product manager here. Then we can have tracking and productivity. It's another product. It's another PM here. Now we can look at update as another PM. So we have been able to identify three different value from this product. And now this also helps us to determine how large is this product going to be? How large is this product going to be? Now, if we're able to descend this, and every product manager need now to hire their team. Now, we're still talking on release planning. Now, if you understand this flow, then you understand why release planning is important. Now, the manager comes in here and says, okay, if we need to deliver this within the next 6 months, for my team, I'm going to need a total capacity of about, let's say, 34 people. Now, if I'm needing a total capacity of 34 people, then I'm looking at something towards about 4 Scrum team. If I divide 34 by But I'm looking at what? I'm looking at about it's averagely 7 to 10 people in a team, somewhere around here. Okay, I'm looking at, so I need 4 Scrum team to be able to complete this work. Now you realize that just by this thinking, they already are planning, right? This is already release planning happening here. I need to get this out with 6 months. So what do I need? I need 34 people. I need a capacity of 34 people to get this out, which means I need about 4 different teams if we're delivering this by Scrum. Now, I can also do this with a Kanban team. In this way, I might not need up to 4 Scrum team. I might just split it into 2 teams and have 16 people on one team and 16 people on the other team. Right. Now, this is management making their decision on what they need. Based on the decision they're going to make here, they are going to do what? They are going now to build a roadmap. A roadmap is based on the team, based on their capacity, what exactly are we going to be delivering to our customer? Now, all the different product managers do the same. When they do the same, then now they can now come together and look at what are the collaboration that will happen to them. Why? Because they are delivering the same what? They are delivering the same solution, right? So because they're delivering the same solution, remember, right down here, they are product managers, so they're working on what? Product. But they're delivering what? Solution. The same solution. So this also gives you an idea of when we talk about multiple train or multiple ad within an enterprise environment, right? This is the concept of SAFe, why we talk about solution and then a program level or so. So we've spread that all of this is contributing to one solution, what the customer wants, right? What does the customer want? The customer wants a centralized system for staff support. And because they want this, there are several components that need to come together to make up this. Now, all of these different components come together under product management because we need each and every one to manage this and to deliver this effectively. You can also look at this as the concept of what? Value stream. We can pull value from the product manager working on what? Working on the login hub, right? We can do that system completely and independently. So that's an end-to-end value that they're delivering. The same, all product manager must deliver an end-to-end value. If a product manager cannot, they're working on a product that cannot deliver end-to-end, what's going to happen? Now they need to be able to partner with another team or other team to be able to have a full value stream. Now, if they don't do this, what's going to happen? If, let's say, we have a product, which is a login hub, and we section them across 2 product managers, what's going to happen? A lot of interdependency, and that's become an impediment in the process of the project. All right. So the management has actually decided what they need in order to complete this project, and they have defined their teams. Let's say that they made a mistake here and they underestimated right at this level. What's going to happen? And then they get this 4 Scrum team to the fee, right? We have 4 Scrum team. So they get this 4 Scrum team to the fee to execute the project. And when the 4 Scrum team break down this project into stories, right? They realize that we cannot deliver this within 6 months. What happened right here? The release planning cannot go well because there was a mistake in estimating what is needed up here. So the Scrum team comes and say, okay, we cannot deliver this within 6 months. For us to work with our current capacity, we need 8 months to do this, right? And management start negotiating. Why? Because they've committed to a budget. They've promised the client. Now they start looking at how they can get the Scrum Master to do what? To also come in and do some maybe data work and shift some work around, and then try to get maybe full stack developer that can perform about 4 or 5 tasks at the same time and all of that in order to push this. Now, these mistakes have been done at the level of management, and you are deployed as a Scrum Master to one of these teams. You're trying your all possible best to make sure that the team only commit to what they can deliver, but it's not possible for you to deliver the result because the team is already what? Overloaded. There's already so much pressure. So you cannot actually manage this pressure because the pressure is coming from management. Management has set target. So in this case, because management has accepted that they are going to deliver, it becomes more like what? It becomes more like a pain to them. So they cannot listen because they are under pressure. They cannot collaborate. And what happens when someone is under so much pressure? What happened? They don't have the patience to listen. They cannot have a conversation. So you realize that so many attempts for you to strike that balance actually fail. And what do they want you to do? They want you to stick to a plan. So they're pushing you to operate as you are in a waterfall environment. And that is why we said release planning should start from what? Should start from the management level. All right. Let's assume that this was done rightly. So I'll just give you how this could go wrong. Let's assume that this could go rightly and management actually have what? The right estimation. So they have the right estimation. Now, if they have the right estimation, what is going to happen? Now, it's your role as a Scrum Master to be able to do what? To help them implement this right estimation. And this also going to start when you understand what requirements are, because, okay, although the PO still need to go collect requirements, the PO is only collecting requirements from the manager, the person who is managing the product, right? And it's the customer. So we'll call them the internal customer, right? So when you say the PO is communicating with the customer, understand exactly this is what they mean. Now, the PO and the Scrum team entirely need to understand how to effectively do what? Effectively do sprint or iteration planning, right? When I say effectively do sprint or iteration planning, we know that this comes with so many steps. This comes with what? Understanding capacity, understanding what? Velocity, understanding load, understanding estimation, right? Understanding facilitation, understanding communication, understanding retro, and all of this, everything included. So if the Scrum Master come in and is not effective in helping the team do this, you realize that what? The teams that having spillover, the teams that having what? Carry over. We start carrying over story from one sprint to another, and because of that, we cannot meet our release planning. So release planning is not a plan, that it's a whole integration of what happens. In most of the company, the Scrum Master is not engaged in release planning. The Scrum Master doesn't have any business to do with release planning. So you have release managers and all of that. The people actually manage exactly the flow, and then they can only have if they even need arises. The Scrum Master might have an idea of what are the release. The Scrum Master will just have a plan, which is what? The release date. Release date, and then the features they are expecting to release on that date. So the Scrum Master on its own world need to figure out how to collaborate with the PO. So Scrum Master need to collaborate with the PO in order to do what? To make sure that the work that has been planned on this release days go out within this release days. The work go out. So now we're looking at it from all different aspects, how this might happen. So for you to be able to understand that, you need what? You need to understand how to create effective story, the right estimation. This is very important. And that is why if you go to a Scrum interview and you're not able to answer questions on sprint planning and work estimation very well, you definitely have to start forgetting about that interview. It's very important. I told you one thing you cannot even miss. You need to understand to your fingertip a Scrum event in practice. Now, we can give you a benefit of doubt if you don't answer a situational question correctly. That's understandable. But if you cannot even tell me what are the steps we involve in sprint planning, then there's definitely no need for me to hire you. Why? Because you're gonna come push my project scope over, and are getting a big mess. And which is why I always say, if you cannot close your eyes and talk about sprint planning and talk about backlog refinement and talk about review, retrospective in 10 different ways, then you're not ready for interviews. You're just rushing to go maybe get a crash, like someone that just start learning to drive, and then you want to drive, let's say, 1,000 miles the next day, and you just start learning today. You're just pushing yourself to go have a crash, right? And when you have a crash, what happened? You might have phobia and never drive again. This was happening to many people. It's like, oh, this is too harder than what I thought, so I'm out. Why? They did not effectively prepare. So now let's assume that we got all of this right? We got the concept of how it's being connected to the roadmap, to how we do the planning, everything. We got this right. We understand what it means to collect requirements and break down these requirements to ensure that it fits within our release planning. So estimation and sprint planning is an integral part of release planning that must be incorporated. Maybe when you're talking about release planning, you might not really talk from that concept, but you need to understand that if you don't get this wrong, if you don't get it right, then release planning would be something which is more like what? It's just a ceremony for you. You don't understand the importance, you bring it there. Now, if all of this is set in place, then we can go in and talk about what exactly should you be doing. Now, what are you doing? The first thing you're doing when all of this is set in place, you're doing prioritization. So you need to prioritize. Now, what are you prioritizing? You prioritizing what? You prioritizing features. And if you're prioritizing features, of course, these features are breaking down into stories, because the way the team execute the work is in stories. But I think in the last session, I explained to you why features matter so much to the customer, right? And the stories is just for the development team. I did explain based on this concept, that if you go to a restaurant and you order, let's say, pepperoni cheese pizza, right? And you don't care about what is happening at the background in the kitchen. If they serve you something different, which is not pepperoni cheese pizza, will you accept it? No. So, but then I told you stories are what? The team members out there actually putting the pepperoni, the cheese, and everything together in order to come out with what you requested. So what the customer requested, the customer doesn't request stories. And which is why when we do our review and demo, that what is most important, which many Scrum teams still don't get, is not about trying to talk about how you were building it and what code you use. And it's all about what is the minimum working software. What's the minimum working software the customer can see, right? Minimum working software is what? It's the future. What can we use? So if we don't give it from that perspective, it's definitely also will not help the client. Now we're looking at what? Let me go back to what let me try to refocus here. We're looking at prioritization. You want to prioritize what's priority for the customer, and this priority comes into futures, and this future is prioritized based on how the customer plan to launch their business. There's one thing that must come after another, after another. Let's say you want to start a chain of restaurant business. What's going to happen? We should plan to expand them. There is the way there's one thing you need first, then start adding it up, right? You cannot start by maybe investing all your money in getting a very sophisticated payment system and review system when you don't even have the furnitures to put in the restaurant. So this is exactly how digital product works. So when we have this priority, it can now help us to start thinking about what date do these futures need to go out. We can start thinking about January, February, March, April, and we start tacking on, okay, this can go out by this period. This can go out by this period. Now in SAFe, this is what we call what? They also are main futures, but then when we accomplish a major feature that can get the customer start working, this is also referred to as a milestone. Yes, we have done this. So the customer is glad. Now, when this is done, what happened? This is why backlog prioritization is very important, because things might change. You might target these, and while the development team is working on this future, the development team realizes that, hey, for us to do this, we need security permission from database in the state, because this need to meet with XXY law. Now, this is something that wasn't previewed. So because this wasn't previewed, this can affect the delivery date. So in this case, this needs to be communicated directly to the product manager. The product manager needs to go and discuss with the customer. And if this is something they cannot do without, they will need to do what? Come here and adjust the scope, right? And adjust the scope, because there's a major requirement. And now this is also going to change the way our release was planned, because a new major feature that we did not foresee at the beginning comes in. This is why they ask you the question, what's going to happen if there's a major requirement that comes in that needs urgent attention, right? So you now understand why it comes in. So at this point, your goal is not just to say, oh, you know what, if you come in, I'm going to sit with my manager and have a discussion because we already planned stuff. So it's your flexibility to understand that, okay, this is normal. And this can happen because of this reason, right? This is where you do a value conversation with a recruiter. They know that you're knowledgeable. So we need to shift away from just giving the normal answer and be invested in the conversation as people who are knowledgeable. And this only happens when you create the time to understand this concept in details. Now, when this happens, we already have planned our release. What's going to happen? We now need to ensure that we're planning in futures. We now need to ensure that all of these stories, all of this work is broken down into what? Into stories and tags and everything. Stories, the way that is going to make your team effectively deliver the work. Now, in some of the cases, the reason why we are going to emphasize on subtaxing, on taxing and subtaxing, is because this is how we can effectively deliver the work. This is how we can effectively be accountable, right? So it depends on the team you're working on. You might be working on a data team that might be a bit different. You might be working on maybe migration that might be a bit different. You might need to really break stuff into tasks, because you cannot visualize what? You cannot visualize the futures. We do migration, we're not migrating futures, we're migrating data. So we probably need to focus on taxing. So this also helps you as a customer to know exactly what to understand. Now, release planning also don't just end at when is it going to go out, it also go more into, when we're doing release planning, we also looking at what? We're also looking at, okay, release planning means you need to go out. It means we need to deploy, right? So how is the organization or the team ready for deploy? Do we have an automated system that will help us deploy, or are we going to do manual deployment? If we're going to do manual deployment, do we have enough tester to validate unit testing, to validate integration testing, to validate user acceptance, and to do all the regression? Do we have enough capacity for that? If we're doing automated deployment, then is our system automated enough to be able to accommodate all of this process? So we need to think about deployment as well. Now, when you think about deployment, right, you still need to go beyond and think about operational support. Now, operational support simply means that when you release the product, it moves from your environment to the client environment. So for customer retention and also for adding business value, you must also prepare what resources or capacity to support the client. Just imagine someone deliver, let's say you bought a sport equipment, and then someone deliver it to you from a company, and you don't know how to operate it, and you call them for 2 weeks and they don't pick. What's going to happen? You did not receive the support, so you're going to give a very bad review to this company. What are they doing? They're losing customer. So the organization does not only plan release and end at the level where they deploy to the customer, they release to the customer environment, and that is all. They also plan for operational support. And this operational support, the team that actually released it might not really be the team supporting. The organization might decide to find what extra resources. Because if the team that is at the level of releasing it is the one still supporting, this might take away capacity from them. But if this is planned as part of their work, then it's okay. They might do it. But most organizations will normally have a support team that stand by. And this support team most often a Kanban team, because they might be supporting different businesses, right? They might be supporting business. So when the ticket comes in, they need to quickly prioritize them and see how they can pull them and they get out effectively. So in that case, we're also going to look at how is the organization effectively getting ready for this, right? So that gives us the end-to-end process of what release planning is. And with that understanding, you can easily figure out what will the Scrum Master be doing in release planning. Now, if you, at this point, you are not still able to answer the question of the role of a Scrum Master in release planning, then something is missing. Why? You don't yet understand what's your role as a Scrum Master. Then you need to go now study what is the role of a Scrum Master. Then you can now understand this, right? That's also the concept. When you're struggling to understand something, you need to go back. Like, okay, I'm missing a concept. And that's why sometimes you put so much effort in trying to understand one concept and you don't understand. At that point, you need to identify that something is missing. So we just spoke about release planning end to end, right? I did not actually so much emphasize on the customer in, but I did kind of mention at the high level. So if you cannot still figure out what's the role of the customer in, then you're missing what you need to, what a Scrum Master should be doing in a team, right? Then you need to go learn how a Scrum Master is the main person facilitating. A Scrum Master is the person that work with the team to prioritize the stories and all of that, and you can easily figure it out. Now, also, just to end this up before I take a couple of questions, what you also need to understand is that there is definitely no right or wrong answer when you understand the concept. So there's no way in answering this question, which is the only way, right? So why? I just gave you different scenario. I may ask you the question, right? What has been your role as a Scrum Master in supporting release? I can say that in my environment, release were done quarterly, and we had a whole release team that handled that. So my role as a Scrum Master was just to ensure that the release team have a well-released calendar that is available for me and my team, and what features are expected to go there. So what I do is I ensure I tag all the stories and the features that are in the next release, and make sure that my team finishes that before time, and we are able to support them get their release out on time. And we always put like a spring buffer, which means that we need to get everything out at least 2 weeks before the date. In that case, if we're missing something out, we can fill the gap. Right. Now, in an environment where you want to say that you have been engaged in the process of release, you can now say, okay, oh yeah, I've actually taken part in release planning, and this is what we're looking at. We're looking at the product roadmap. We're looking at when does the customer expect it, and then looking at the team capacity, how the story has been breaking down the level of the team, looking at what's the timeline to compare it, and we now assigning possible date that we can release it to our client. And at that level, we also look at how to not just release, but to support the customers, and what capacity are we going to allocate to support the customer when we start releasing, because this is also going to affect the way we work. So you realize that you can, now if you're in a safe environment, you know that release planning is an integral part of PI planning. So you don't necessarily do so much work in a safe environment on release planning, because when we plan during the PI, we're already doing what? We're already planning towards the release. So your work is now to help your team make sure that what they committed to is what they deliver. Now, coming back to the PI environment, work that's going to be done in the PI is not just prepared during during the IP iteration. Immediately a PI is launched, management, the product manager, the release and business, they are behind every day preparing already what is going to happen in the other next 3 months. So if they're not doing that, what happened? They get surprises and they're not able to release on time. All right, any question? You put your hand up and then you can ask your question. Yes, Joseph, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have this question. Maybe how do you kind of answer a question where you are being asked your release management process in your organization, and maybe some of the release management tools?
Come again.
So if you were kind of asked a question that how was the process of the release management, what's the management release process in your organization, how will you answer that question? And probably the release management tools that you use in your organization. I don't know whether you just have to say Jenkins, or I don't know.
No, if you're not part of the process, you're not part of the process.
Okay.
Now, this is not a question you do guesswork on it. And this is why I've given you all of this strategy. If you're not part of release management, you're not part of release management. That you cannot guess that, oh, this is the way we release. If you're part of release management, then you will understand your release processes, right? Now, you understand it varies per different organization. When work is being deployed, maybe get to the big bucket. From there, you go to the artifact. I don't know what your organization may using. Then we can start talking about maybe we do code quality analysis with SonarQube. Then Jenkins pick it from there. If you don't understand this process, don't try to fake it. No, you're talking to those who know the end-to-end value of it. So if we talk about release management, you have definitely no clue on it. Now, your escape route would be to tell them you had a whole release management team.
Okay.
Right. And what your major role, what you were permitted to, and you did not have access to the environment. So when you have a release management team, you will not have access to the environment of the release management team. Right. But most often you will not have access. If you're fortunate to have access to the repository that give an explanation, you can go there and learn. Right, but they will not give you access to testing environment or access to deployment environment when you're not part of that team. So I will focus on me being within the Scrum team, and at that level, what are we doing? The release management gives you a clear date, what features are going to be there, ask them questions, make sure that you give it 2 weeks buffer and you help your team release that. That is good enough. No one is going to crucify you because you don't understand the tools and the detailed process in it. You're not a release manager. And in most of the cases, it is advocated that the Scrum Master is not supposed to be the release manager. The Scrum Master is just going to make sure that they understand the release calendar and understand how and make sure that they support their team to meet release support and all of that. Yeah.
So just to add to that, okay, so if the Scrum Master's role is just to maybe make sure that the team is able to have a calendar and know the features that are supposed to work. So how do you kind of, as a Scrum Master, foster collaboration with your team?
What do you mean foster collaboration with your team?
Like, okay, like how do you kind of like maybe some of the things that you kind of do in order to like keep the communication going within your team?
Just be there. There's nothing extra you need to do.
Oh.
You're just there for your team. What's collaboration? Collaboration is creating an environment where everybody is open to talk. Like, okay, look, feel free, ask a question at any time. We have open conversation. We don't make the environment tense. We can notice what every other person is going through. We can empathize with them. Now that's collaboration, right? So collaboration is not something that you teach people. It's an environment that you enable and people can come in and then take it from there, right? So helping your team to effectively collaborate, it's more like supporting them and just being there as a Scrum Master. And when issue comes up that you notice that, all right, these are issues that might affect the team. You want to bring it up to the retrospective. You want us to talk about it. You want us to have open conversation about the entire process. Yeah. But the most effective way your team is just to be there for them, even when they don't feel like doing it. Just don't be say, oh, this is management, I expect this from us. Like, okay, I know you guys don't want to do this, but team, trust me, I got your back, right? Just be there for them. Yeah. If you want to go a bit more techy or a bit more artificial, you can start talking about, okay, you do ice breaking, you do extra activity that the team get to know each other and build all of that. But most often nobody have time for that. Just be there for them and they'll do the work. All right. Any other question on release planning?
There's a question on the chat.
At what time of the day do we do release? I have team members say we up all night doing releases. Okay, perfect. Now, in the reason why releases most often are planned to happen during the weekend or during non-working hours is because we might need to put a lot of activity on hold within the organization. We freeze so many parts of the process so that it does not affect what is going on. So that's the best possible time. Or during a holiday, we can plan to release. So that's the response. Yeah, but then if your system has been set in such a way that this cannot be affected, or maybe you have a system that can effectively perform releases without freezing any other part, then you can do releases at any time. But most often, many organizations plan their releases at midnight and other stuff. Now, also, this is the reason. In case there is a failure in the system while they're releasing, they can fix that before people get back to work. In case anything happens, they can take care of that. In case, or they might be working on a release and maybe there's a team that push another code into their system. And then this messes up the whole show. Okay. Any other question? Yes, India, and then Akibu.
So do we have to like get make notes during release? Because I like when I in my organization they used to say submit your release notes, so I don't understand.
Yeah, so if we plan to get, let's say, 5 minimum marketable futures out, what are the notes? Did they all release successfully? Were there some glitches in the system? And you need to be able to write down every note. This has been released successfully. This XYZ code actually did not release, and all of this. So for you to do that, you need to collaborate with your release team. If you're the one facilitating that, right? If you're the one facilitating that, then you need to be able to collaborate with whosoever is there, because your role is to ask questions and understand exactly what is there. Most often, Scrum Master, you just stay there. And then you can now ask your release manager, everything went okay. Then for your team, you can say, okay, this we're able to release XYZ. This was could not release and has been pushed to maybe a new date on this. So that's a release note. It's the same as you can be asked at the end of the sprint. We want your sprint report. That's just a note. It's just a note to say, okay, this is exactly what happened. We're able to do this and X this. This is what happened and all of that. MISPA release is not the same as deployment. Now, deployment, it's about moving from one environment to another, which might not necessarily go out, right? Release simply means that you've completed the work and it's now ready for the market. So those are the two different things. Yes, Akibo.
Yeah, thanks, Doc, and thanks again for this beautiful breakdown. I want to ask about the release planning, and because I know based on the explanation you gave, the business, while discussing with customer, have this alignment with them, and they probably must have agreed on when these releases will be done, which is leading to the release calendar. Now it's being handed down the train to the product owner before the team get all of it. But as the product is being broken down or whatever features, I'm sure a lot of things changes. Some things they think will come later might probably be the one they'll first try to get. At what point in time do this synergy happen where you think you need to go back to customer to let them know that the release might not happen, or once it is sealed at the beginning, you just have to work out the way it is to release the way is discussed, or is flexible?
Okay. One of the key principles of Scrum says that we accept changes, even late. in the process, right? So it's not fixed. It's not fixed as in the project way. We have a concept called plan, do, check, adjust, right? That's why we have circles of small sprint. Fail fast, then fast, fail cheap. That's the whole concept. So you don't have to wait until the end to go figure out what happened. Immediately it happens, it needs to be communicated. And that's why we can even have the product, the sprint backlog change. Why? Because, okay, this is not working. We need to replan. We need to re-strategize. And sometimes you might even have your entire PI objective change. Why? There's a new requirement that need to be taken care of. So your team need to trade off and start working on this. So yes, it's a continuous process. It's not release planning. It's a continuous process. It's not a fixed process.